I do feel like there's a bit of like a white privilege I kind of received as a kid. You know, there's some other like mixed kids who are like their mothers like Vietnamese or Kazakhs from Kazakhstan or something. So then like they just don't get like that same sort of like, wow, that's amazing sort of treatment.
As I said, Korean people didn't really see me as Korean.
Which of the culture are you more connected to?
When I'm in Korea, I feel more Pakistani. When I'm in Pakistan, I feel more Korean.
Do you get a sense of feeling that people want to become your friend because you are half Korean or Korean?
I used to have that feeling back when I was in high school, like when K-pop and K-dramas were getting more famous.
What is your name?
I'm Tyler. My father's from Korea and my mother's from America.
What's it like growing up as a half Korean, half American?
Growing up, I was always, people always like looked at me. They stared at me, and I kind of liked the attention, especially back then. Like I think Korea was less globalized back then, so they were more surprised to see like a mixed child. And I think I wasn't really upset that people would like call me a foreigner. I was more upset that like oftentimes what happened, like there'd be these like very like pretty high school girls, and then they see me like, oh, what a beautiful baby foreign girl. Like the ranking of like where I was insulted most was like, first of all, they called me a baby. That was like the biggest insult, and then they called me a girl, and then they called me a foreigner. So I'm like, that's the sort of ranking and how I felt. Especially since my other half is white. People only think I'm white. They never think I'm mixed or anything like that. So I do feel like there's a bit of like a white privilege I kind of received as a kid, because people were always so impressed at how good my Korean was as a little boy. You know, there's some other like mixed kids who are like their mothers like Vietnamese or Kazakhs from Kazakhstan or something. So then like they just don't get like that same sort of like, wow, that's amazing sort of treatment. They just like, I feel like they kind of get looked down in society a bit more.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up my entire life here, actually. I mean, besides going to university in the U.S., my whole life was here.
Were you ever curious about American culture, like as a kid growing up?
My impression of American culture was very much informed by my mom, because she's from the Generation X. So then like growing up, I'd always listen to like Michael Jackson and like these like 80s and like 70s, 90s music. I felt like I kind of I was raised in like a time capsule a little bit. I kind of was raised up to think like a Generation X as a kid. That was my impression of America, was like the America that she left, which was in the 90s. I guess I had a bit of a culture shock when I came to America for university, and saw how young people were like so different than my mom's generation.
How so?
I think America's a lot more like politically like polarized than it once was. I think also like the general impression of America is a lot more negative than it was back then. It's a very different view of America than I had growing up.
Growing up in a very mixed household, which language were you brought up with?
I actually learned a lot of my Korean outside the house. I spoke a lot of English inside the house because my father speaks English pretty fluently, even though he never lived in the U.S. or anything. He learned it from my mom, I guess. I don't know. He speaks English surprisingly very well. So then growing up, I'd speak English with him, and like a little bit Korean, but mostly English.
Can you briefly introduce your background in Korean?
안녕하세요. 저는 윤나겸이고 평생 한국에서 살았고 지금은 미국에서 유학하고 있어요.
미국은 왜 유학하게 됐었나요? 한국에서도 학교가 다닐 수 있었잖아요.
제가 어렸을 때부터 국제학교를 다녀서 그리고 그 이중국적이라서 그냥 미국으로 가는 게 제일 쉬웠어요. 네.
Do you feel a sense of belonging in Korea?
I don't know how to live outside of here. This is all I know. And hopefully this is going to be a country that I want to continue to live in. I mean, I can see myself living like abroad for like a couple of years, but like I think like this is home base, at least for me. I know a lot of my friends, they feel more comfortable in the US.
What about Korea just makes it like so homely for you?
Well, part of it is, the amenities, and I didn't realize how good Korean service was until I left Korea. Like, oh my goodness, like they go out of their way to help you.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm half Korean, half German. I was born and raised in Germany, but I spent almost every summer here in Seoul visiting my family. I just graduated high school, and now I'm on a gap year where I'm traveling to Seoul and other places, and then in September I'm starting law school.
So which of your parents is Korean and which of your parents is German?
So my mom's from Korea. She also grew up in Korea, but then she moved to Germany after meeting my dad and getting married to him.
How do you navigate cultural identity in a homogeneous society like Korea?
So I would say cultural identity is in general a really big topic in my life right now, because ever since I hit puberty, I was asking myself, okay, where do I belong? Because maybe I should say that beforehand. When I'm in Korea, people think I'm European. When I'm in Germany, people think I'm Asian. So I had to get used to being the foreigner wherever I was. And because of that, I now don't really mind that people in Korea see me as a foreigner. and I just try to like blend in, adapt to the culture as much as I can. But still, like, I try to preserve that I have this German part of me as well, and I try to understand that Koreans are interested and curious about getting to know this German part of me. So because Korea is not as diverse as Germany, for example, I feel like they want to know a lot about you, and they're curious. They're really passionate about getting to know you and your story in a good way.
As a half Korean, how does the beauty standard in Korea affect your self-perception?
So obviously I'm aware of all the beauty standards in Korea, but I wouldn't say that they have a very huge impact on my life, my self-perception, but maybe a little influence though, because for example, Germany or German people really like to be tanned in the summer. But Koreans, they prefer being pale over tanned, and I just realized that I, for myself, prefer being a little more pale, so I make sure to apply sunscreen every day. And my German friends, for example, they don't. They just go out into the sun, they lay there for a couple of hours to get this really nice tan. But if you go to the beach, for example, in Korea, you will find people completely covered because they don't want to get any like sunlight on their skin. But I feel like when I'm in Korea, I feel a little more anxious about maybe my weight, the way my face looks, the way like if my body is in shape, because Koreans care about that a little more than Germans do. And I find myself like putting a little more thoughts into my outfits because Koreans really like dressing up. They like to put on some eyeshadow with glitter and that. So I find myself doing that as well when I'm here, more than I am in Germany.
As a half Korean, what stereotypes do you get met with in Korea?
Well, I feel like there aren't those typical stereotypes regarding half Koreans. I just noticed that a lot of people in my surroundings in Korea, they try to categorize me into being either German or Korean. So they see me doing something that's not familiar to them, then they're like, oh, you're so German at that point. And the other way around. Like when I love Korean food, so that's when they're like, oh, 한국인이네. And when I'm like, I like to save my money, I like to be on time, as Germans do, that's when I hear, oh, 독일 사람이네.
You mentioned about your love for Korean food. What is your favorite Korean food?
Oh, there are too many. I feel like I love kimbap. My mom and I, we share this passion for kimbap. We could eat kimbap every day. And my mom, actually, she almost eats kimbap every day.
Growing up, how much of the Korean culture did your mother teach you?
I would say a lot, but maybe not like directly, intentionally, actively, she would just talk to me in Korean. She would cook a lot of Korean food at home. And just by going to Korea every summer, I feel like I absorbed a lot of the Korean culture automatically. But some of the half Koreans in Germany, they actually attend like a Korean school on Saturdays to get to know more about the Korean culture, the language. I didn't do that, so I might be lacking some knowledge about the Korean culture in some points, but I feel like I absorbed a lot through my mom and the time I spent here.
Can you briefly introduce your background?
I'm half Korean, half Pakistani. So my mother is Korean and dad is from Pakistan.
You mentioned that you came to Korea like 10 years ago. Where did you grow up?
I mostly grew up in Lahore, born in Karachi, came to Lahore, and then for the 18 years of my life, I was there.
What made you decide to come back to Korea?
Because half of my family lives here, and it pays well here.
Growing up as a kid, did your mother teach you about the Korean culture and also the Korean language?
She tried her best to teach us Korean language, but I suck at it. She's sometimes pissed at me trying to say that, Sangmin, come on, learn. And I think I'm using most of my energy to the other parts of my life instead of just focusing on the Korean, which is not really good, but I will not recommend that. But it's kind of working for me, so it's fine.
How does the Korean beauty standards impact your self-perception as a half Korean?
You know, I was okay with my look, how I used to look. When I was young, I was actually happy with that. But I remember I was always curious about, not curious, I was a little bit not too happy about my ears. And one day I was on the subway and just standing over there, and I was really against plastic surgeries, and just standing, having my time, listening to music. And then I saw a poster over there, we can fix your ears for 40만 원. And it felt so direct to me. It felt like it's talking to me right now, saying, we can do it for you. And I was like, wow, actually just 40만 원, I can move my ears back. It will be really nice to do it. But then I just caught myself at the time like, wait, what I'm thinking? And later in life, with some friends actually making me realize that it makes me unique somehow, and it's a trait of me, and my baby girl loves it. So
Do you see yourself living in Korea long term?
I wouldn't mind living in Korea. I'm trying to make a living in Korea right now and make a ground in Korea, build some pillars over here. But if my life brings me somewhere else for the better opportunity, I think I will go easily.
Which of your culture are you more connected to, your Pakistan culture or your Korean heritage?
When I'm in Korea, I feel more Pakistani. When I'm in Pakistan, I feel more Korean.
What's your name?
My name is Hart. Oh, my dad is British and my mom is Korean. I just lived my entire life in Korea. I went to Korean school when I was very little, and then I went to a French school for elementary school, and then now I'm going to an international school.
And how many languages you speak?
I speak 3 languages: Korean, English, and French.
And can you introduce yourself in those 3 languages?
안녕하세요. 저는 16살 전하트고 지금 고2입니다. Bonjour, je m'appelle Art et j'ai 16 ans. Et oui. Hi, my name is Hart and I'm 16 years old and I'm a junior.
What was it like, just growing up as a half Korean?
Especially when I was little, it was very confusing, especially my identity, because when I went to the Korean school, everyone would ask me where I'm from, and I would be like, I'm Korean, but they'll not believe me because they just thought I was just a foreigner, or white, and they'll be really surprised if I talked in Korean. So I was very confused, and if I go to England, they all just treat me as a Korean. So that's just something that I struggled with a bit.
Which country did you grow up in?
In Korea. I only lived in Korea. I wanted to live in England, but my parents love Korea, so we just never left.
You mentioned that you wanted to live in England. Why is that?
Because I was just always curious how it was, because I was only exposed to Korean culture, but I wanted to know more about my English culture, but I never really got to experience that, so yeah.
Do you feel a sense of belonging in Korea?
Now I do. I used to kind of struggle with that, because as I said, Korean people didn't really see me as Korean. But now that I go to an international school, everyone's kind of like me. There are a lot of mixed people. There are a lot of people that can relate to my story, so I feel a sense of belonging.
What are some common questions you often get asked as you have Korean?
If I'm Korean, because even if I walk into a store, they just talk to me in English, and then if I talk back in Korean, they're really shocked, and then they're like, "Oh, you're Korean. I didn't know that." So, and then that's the most common question, I think.
그럼 한국말 어떻게 배웠어요?
그냥 엄마랑 학교에서 배웠어요, 그냥.
계속 한국에서 살고 싶은 마음 있을까요?
옛날에는 뭔가 한국에서 나가고 싶었는데 지금 다시 보니까 그냥 한국이 너무 편하니까 한국에서 계속 살고 싶은 마음이 있는 것 같아요.
Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Stella. I'm half Korean and half New Zealander. So my dad is New Zealander and my mum is Korean. So I grew up in Korea till I was in year 6, and then I moved to Australia and lived there for around 7 years, and then I came back to Korea recently.
What was it like growing up in Australia as a half Korean?
Interestingly, they didn't really see me as a halfie. They thought I was just full Asian. I didn't really feel like a Asian when I was in Australia.
And how was it like in Korea?
I got treated like I was a foreigner in Korea, so everyone used to come up to me thinking I was full white, and they would just speak English to me. I feel like Koreans assumed, some Koreans at least assumed I was Asian, so they would ask me where I was from.
Growing up as a kid, what were some interesting moments you've had?
So when I was in Korea, they expected me to speak fluent English, but I actually couldn't speak English when I was young. Even though my dad did not speak any Korean, I didn't really get that many chance to properly learn English, and my dad didn't really care that much, and I didn't have that much of a problem communicating with my dad because I just would use my body language, and he understood somewhat Korean. Yeah, it was funny that I couldn't speak English when I was young, and people just thought that I would speak English. So whenever we would have English lessons at school, they were like, "Oh, Stella, you would know this," and I'd be like, "Not really."
What were some of the biggest cultural differences you've experienced growing up as a half Korean?
I think definitely the formal and informal ways to speak to people in Korea. whereas we don't really have that in Australia. Definitely like the mannerisms are definitely a bit different. So I did struggle a bit more in Korea because of the specific way to act around people that are older than you.
Growing up in both cultures, how do you tend to interact with foreigners versus Koreans?
So right now, when I live in Korea, I do get really excited when I see like foreigners because I get to speak English with them, and I do tend to try to like help them out when they do need help, and I try to be relatable as possible. And also the same when I was in Australia, I would get really excited when I would see like Koreans there, and I would try to like get them to feel comfortable since they're like in overseas. So I think that's how I interacted with them.
How many languages do you speak?
I do speak only 2 languages at the moment, but I am currently trying to teach myself to speak Japanese. I do love Japan, so I want to be able to speak fluent Japanese every time I go to Japan.
부모님들이랑 뭐 대화할 때는 어떤 언어를 쓰나요?
저 엄마랑은 한국어하고 지금은 아빠랑 영어를 쓰긴 하는데 옛날에는 제가 영어를 잘 못했어가지고 그냥 한국어, 영어 2개 다 콩글리시 쓰면서 대화했어요.
왜 호주에서 떠나서 한국에 살기 원했나요?
제 직업상 할 수 있는 게 한국에 더 많고 뭔가 제 나이에는 놀거리가 한국이 더 많고 해서 한국에 다시 왔어요.
Do you feel a sense of belonging in Korea as a half Korean?
Like yes and no. Like sometimes when people come up to me speaking English and just kind of treat me a bit different, sometimes I'll be like how come I am not considered a Korean? At least the people around me treat me like a Korean, consider me like a Korean. So most of the times I do definitely feel like I do belong here since I already know the language and I feel Korean. So
Can you briefly introduce yourself?
I'm Ines. My Korean name is Uong. So I'm half Korean, half French. I grew up in France, and I've always wanted to like live in Korea. So I came here as an exchange student. So yeah, here I am. Yeah, and I study. I'm in the business school in France. So I study luxury marketing.
Which of your parents is Korean and which of your parents is French?
My mom is Korean and my dad is French.
So what was it like, just growing up as a half Korean kid?
Actually, like when I was younger, like till middle school, people didn't know about Korea at all. It's like everybody used to ask me like, are you Chinese, Japanese? And when I said Korea, they were like, what country is that? Like, does that even exist? Or people, keep just asking like, hey, are you from South Korea, North Korea, and stuff like this. I feel like I had like identity quest where I didn't fit either in France or in Korea. I always felt like a stranger. And then BTS arrived. People knew about Korea and suddenly it was like super cool to be Korean. Yeah, and now I'm just like, I don't want to try to fit in anything. I just want to live by my own.
Do you feel a sense of belonging in Korea?
I think I feel this sense more in France than in Korea. I feel that people accept you more in France. In France, everyone talks to me in French, and in Korea, there's still this thing where if you look like a foreigner, they're always going to talk to you in English, even though you can speak Korean.
Do you speak Korean?
네, 한국말을 해요.
한국 혹시 언제부터 오게 되셨나요?
제 할머니 할아버지가 한국에 살아 계셔가지고 어렸을 때부터 여름 방학 때마다 오기는 했어요.
가장 좋아하는 문화가 뭐예요?
약간 한국에서는 무슨 문제가 있던지 도움이 필요하면은 진짜 사람들이 막 도우려고 하는 게 느껴지긴 하는 것 같아요. 약간 프랑스는 let's say you have a problem with a membership and you call for help, everyone is being like, yeah, I'm not sure, whatever. And in Korea, it really feels like people want to help you.
What is life like in Korea compared to back in France?
It's much more peaceful in France. And in Korea, it's like there's too much information everywhere. Like even on buildings, you have like so many lights, so many different things on one building. I know that in Korea, they say 복잡하다. Like that's the feeling I get. But yeah, I'm sure that's because I'm still trying to adapt.
Do you see yourself living in Korea long term?
I see myself living in Korea maybe for a few years, like 2 or 5 years. But I also want to explore like other parts of the world.
What are lies you've been told about Korea?
Korea is presented like kind of a conservative country, but I still feel like they're very open about a lot of activities, especially everything related to like pole dancing, for example, or hill dancing, flying yoga, Pilates. Like it's much more accessible. And like because I've been trying to do some pole dance and hill dance in Paris, and it was a lot more difficult to find those kind of activities when in Korea it's like everywhere, and people like really see it as a sport. Whether in France you have a different point of view towards this kind of activities.
Korea can be very conservative. Is the dating culture in Korea conservative as well?
I mean, I've never dated in Korea, so I'm not really sure, but I feel like the difference there is that in Korea, when you date, you have to do some things because you're dating. Like, for example, you need to text like once every hour, and I feel like it's much more chill in Europe.
You know, when you tell people you're half Korean, what is usually their reaction?
People are very surprised because from my looks, I don't look Korean. Even in France, actually, people think I'm from Algeria. So that's very fun.
Do you get a sense of feeling that people want to become your friend because you are half Korean or Korean?
I used to have that feeling back when I was in high school, like when K-pop and K-dramas were getting more famous. But now I don't get that feeling anymore. Yeah, I feel like when I tell people that I'm half Korean, they're more interested about like the cultural background and other stuff.